Everyone has a story.
What's yours?
Hi, I'm Michael.
And I'm Katie.
And this is Monumental, a small show about the big things that God does in the lives of ordinary people.
Guess who we're talking about this week, Michael? You!
Hooray! I've been waiting all my life for this moment.
I know that you have.
All right, where do you want to start?
Well, Michael Crum, tell us, who are you?
I am one of 5 kids. Dad also, like your dad, is a pastor, and
We just have so much in common.
I know.
And we're both married to Ben's.
Yeah.
And
What year were you born?
85.
Baby, 85, baby.
Oh, yes.
I knew.
That was a good year. I knew it was a good year. And your dad also is a pastor.
I married not exactly my high school sweetheart because he was no longer in high school when we were dating. I know. Yep, he's a little older. So I actually got married after my freshman year of college, and I was 19. I was a teenage bride.
Ooh, wow.
I know, scandalous. You can only imagine what my extended family thought of that. Anyway, so yeah, we got married when I was 19, and he was 23. We had our first baby on our 2-year anniversary.
All right.
So that was a funny anniversary present. So I was 21 when I had our first son, and then 16 months later, our second son came along.
Wow.
Yeah. I won't say that, how do you say? I don't want to say he was an accident, but
he was planned.
Unplanned by us.
He was an unplanned blessing.
That's right.
Do you think it was difficult to get married at a really young age? Because one of the things my sister used to always tell me, because I didn't get married until I was 29, and maybe she just said this to make me feel better, but
Yeah.
well, you're getting married later in life, so maybe you'll avoid a lot of the drama and
Like,
immature.
just based on immaturity.
Yeah.
I said this to myself at the time. I think Ben and I said this to each other, that we knew we still had a lot of growing up to do, but we were just going to do it together.
Yeah.
You know?
That's cool.
I would like to say that it was all just faith. But you know what else there was a lot of mixed in was just me and maybe Ben, but probably just me being cocky and just thinking we're going to do what we're going to do. I don't think that we were ignoring. I think that we were taking advice from other people that we respected. I think we were seeking counsel from people that, were godly. But when I think about my response to people's just sort of wide-eyed looking on, I won't quite say in horror, but what? So then we got married, and then the first year, in some ways it was easier. In some ways it was harder because I had been told that when you get married, you still get lonely. But I don't think I really believed it. I kind of thought, once we're married, we'll never, neither of us will ever be lonely again. And then to find out, poor Ben, he could not fulfill my every emotional need, This thing called marriage is not the be-all and end-all of your life,
Right.
And
it's
then,
wait a second. He's a fallen human, and I'm a fallen human.
And you put it together, and you get a whole lot of fallen. Falling. And we were happily married, but, we fought a lot. And listen to me talking in past tense. We don't fight anymore, and he's not fallen anymore, and I'm not fallen anymore. I was about to say we were both very stubborn, and then I was like, we are both very stubborn. And I should say we are 12 years in now.
All right.
So after 2 years, we had baby number 1 on our 2-year anniversary, and then 16 months later had baby number 2.
On your anniversry, you had an anniversary baby.
Yeah.
So do you celebrate your anniversary, or do you celebrate the birthday?
Year, do we celebrate him or us?
Yeah.
Or both. How do you do both? I actually had 2 miscarriages before Daniel was born.
Man.
So in those first 2 years of marriage.
And Daniel's your oldest.
Yeah. I want to say it was like 4 months into our first year of marriage. I actually had my first miscarriage, and I was...
okay, so first year of marriage was not a piece of cake.
Yeah, it was not a piece of cake. Then I had a year of school at IU, and then I had another miscarriage at the end of that school year, and, you know, worked that summer. And then we ended up deciding to do this short-term mission trip to South Africa. So we were in South Africa for 4 months, came back, and 5 months later, Daniel was born. So I never did actually... I attended 2 years of college, and then I never did any more college after that.
Okay.
So right there... And I've, at this point, had 3 pregnancies. Two of them were miscarriages, and the third one is my son, who's born to me at the age of 21. You know, so already it's like...
a whole lot of life has happened.
Yeah,
in
and people
short
just thinking,
span of
like,
time.
are you serious? Like, not only are you getting married young, but you're clearly not using birth control, right? Which, you know, we must be out of our ever-loving minds. But we had decided that we were, you know, okay with having babies right away, because we thought, you know, we're going to have to do a lot of growing up together. May as well throw a baby in the mix. Yeah. Why not?
Why
right?
not? Go big or go home, right?
Big or go home, right. Anyway, so yeah, I know a lot of it's just bullheadedness of like thinking, you know, whatever, people used to do it this way, we'll survive, we'll figure it out as we go along. You know, we could wait until we're 30 to have kids, and we'd still be just as clueless as we are now in terms of like knowing what it will actually be like to be parents and to raise a baby into like adulthood, you know.
Right.
So I think I kind of maintained that attitude up through like the birth of Daniel, our firstborn. And then I found out I was pregnant with Zion, and I just fell apart. I just thought, okay,
wait,
I
now
thought I
this
could
is
do
too
it,
much.
but no, this is too much, you know. I just thought, this is so hard. I had a 7-month-old, and I was pregnant, and I just thought, I can't do this. I don't know what we're doing. Ben had graduated from college and was, at this point, was working in his field, which was a big deal. But I don't know. I still think he was probably getting paid like, he wasn't getting paid much. And we had, you know, student loans to pay off and a few other things. And you just think, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah. Did you start to have kind of like, I don't know, I mean, regret's probably not the right word, but were you all of a sudden like, oh, this is what everybody was talking about. This life, grown-up life thing is really serious. Maybe we rushed into it too fast.
You know, I wouldn't say that I really had regrets of but I think when I got pregnant with Zion, I thought that wasn't supposed to be possible. I mean, of course it is, but you know, here I was nursing this baby, and you know, you're not supposed to be able to get pregnant that quickly. People get pregnant a lot faster than that, but I didn't really know people at that time who just had like babies 1 year apart from each other. So I just was like, oh no, what is going to happen? And
right.
I feel like I can just barely handle one baby. How on earth am I going to handle 2? And yeah, I cried when I found out I was pregnant. I was just like, I can't do this. After, you know, a few weeks, I kind of got to the point where I was excited and thankful for this second baby.
The idea.
So I think that, you know, I just kind of, I wanted to be obedient to God, but I also just kind of wanted to be a free spirit and kind of do what we wanted. And
it got a lot harder to be a free spirit when you had a husband and 2 kids at home.
And I remember thinking, like, you think people just look at you and they go, oh my goodness, you look very young to have, you know, 2 children.
And you're like, yes, I am very young to have 2 children.
Indeed I am. You know, I know a lot of people will like, I used to kind of have this joke with myself, really. I know a lot of people will never take off their wedding band, but I took my wedding ring off all the time because it had this really high stone, and stuff would get like it would get dirty really easily
in there. Yeah.
And it was a little bit too big for me. And so I would, like, if I was doing dishes or if I was making bread or whatever, I would pull it off.
Take it off.
And you know, and put it back on later. Well, sometimes I would forget to put it back on, and so I'd be out or whatever. And I remember thinking, okay, you know, people see you like out and, you know, with 1 kid and you're not married and too young or whatever. They can think, oh, you know, one kid. Anybody can make that mistake. But if they see you 2 kids that are a year apart, too young to be married, then they're just gonna be
totally going to assume.
Idiot.
Yeah.
That's what I would think if I,
So then you're like, I got to have my wedding ring. I actually really love the wedding ring for that purpose. I mean, maybe people don't think about it, but
it's nice.
People know I'm married, and I don't know. I like it. It's just like sort of a security thing, sort of, I guess.
So by the time that second baby came along, I felt like I could handle it. But we were also somehow in the process of purchasing our first home, which was really overwhelming to me. But my husband Ben was a little bit older than I was, and he felt like that was like a reasonable thing to do at the age of 25. Looking back, I'm like, why did we buy a house then? That was insane. But
you were planning to be in Bloomington, and we weren't looking.
And you have this idea of like, okay, well, as long as you rent, you're just like throwing money down. Is how it feels.
That's how it feels. Yeah.
We were trying to pay off debt, and I think we'd paid off the student loan by then, and about to have our second baby.
Yeah, and you've been married for a number of years by now. Right. You're looking to have your second kid, and so it probably really felt like it's time to settle down.
To buy a house.
Yeah.
I was a little less excited about it, partly because I was the one looking at what was available in our price range. And I was just this is not very nice.
This is not where I want to live.
These houses are going to need a lot of work. And then part of it, too, was just it felt like, such a commitment to take on a mortgage. Oh, I hated that word. It was just so... Ugh. So anyway, we found a house. It was kind of a fixer-upper. I remember I was on my hands and knees trying to refinish the floor at like 8 months pregnant with a 1-year-old in tow. I'm sure somebody else had the 1-year-old that day, but I remember just the pain of crawling along that wood floor on my hands and knees, 8 months pregnant, trying to refinish part of something. And then we had the second baby, and it was one of the times in my life where God said, "You can't do this." I think he just humbled me and showed me how much I need him for daily sustenance, like physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
You got to a point where you realized you were just trying to go along on your own strength.
Yeah, I just absolutely hit a breaking point. I had postpartum depression, and I don't think I realized it. I think that I just, depression, it's such a weird word. It's just, there's so much to it that you think it's going to look a certain way, or you think if I admit that I've got it, then what does that mean? You don't really know.
Yeah.
So I just kind of thought I was losing my mind. I had this crazy anxiety about all sorts of things. One of the first things that happened that, looking back, I think, okay, that probably should have been like a clue to me that something was not right. Zion, our second born, was less than 2 weeks old, and I set him on the sofa because he's just this little lump, like he's not going anywhere. I set him on the sofa, and I was sitting next to him, and then I think I went to answer the door or something, and he rolled off the bed. He rolled somehow off the sofa, which newborns actually can't roll. So I'm not sure what happened, but somehow this fluke thing happened. He rolled off and onto the floor. So he fell off the sofa onto the floor.
Yeah.
We're talking like 2 feet max, right? Onto thick carpet.
Okay.
But I was so horrified and terrified by the fact that my negligence had allowed this tiny baby to fall off a sofa. And these are the things that happen pretty regularly as parents. Like just something happens and you realize that your child that God has entrusted to you is not entirely in your hands. Like you cannot control. I mean, I just imagine your parents encountering this over and over again, that here you are like entrusted to them, and yet they cannot take away your pain. Or they cannot protect you from the, the medical problems and everything. So just this reality of like, okay.
And you're responsible. So you feel this weight
of responsibility of this baby. And then anyway, so that was within, a couple weeks of his birth. But in the next few months, it really spiraled out of control.
Were you afraid to admit that you were depressed, or? Or did you even quite realize what was going on? I mean, sometimes when you're in something, you don't even really realize like how serious it is until later.
I think that was a big part of it. I think that I just kept thinking, nothing's wrong. This baby is not out of control difficult. He's a sweet little baby. It's not like he's, he doesn't have colic. Like, there's nothing wrong with him. He's not sick. I've got a husband who loves me. I've got this, other child. We've got a new house. Like, what is going on here? Like, everything.
That's the weird thing about depression. Is like, you could sit there, you can list all the good things.
Yeah.
But you still feel this.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So I just
can't explain it.
Yeah. It was just totally inexplicable. I was afraid of like all these, different scenarios, but also just kind of realizing that I did not have control of my life, but then also realizing that I really didn't have control of my emotions. And I've not really been the type of person to really just like cry uncontrollably or just not be able to control the way that I feel like my emotions. And it's just not been a big part of my it's not been a big struggle. It hadn't been a big struggle for me lifelong. And even when other people just couldn't, I think I kind of thought like,
get a grip.
Like, put your big girl underpants on and and here I was and I just couldn't get a grip. And I didn't know what was going on. And I was losing weight. I was like hungry all the time. And I felt like I was eating all the time, but I was losing weight. And so people were asking me, asking me about my weight.
What's going on?
Yeah. And it was just like, it's so apparent that you're not okay.
Yeah. Right. But were you even able to like recognize yourself yet that you weren't okay? Or were you still was it just sort of a confused state that you were in about yourself?
Confused. Yeah. I could not figure out what was going on. I remember thinking that that term postpartum depression kept coming into my head. And I kept kind of thinking, could it be that? And then I remember thinking, I didn't really know anything about postpartum depression. So what I thought was it couldn't be postpartum depression because it didn't start right away.
Oh, yeah. And you were thinking if that's what it was,
if that's what it was, then I would have like had the baby and been depressed ever since. But instead, things were okay for probably a month. And then, but I couldn't figure out how to start thinking rationally. It's like once you get into one of these like thought patterns, you can't just talk yourself out of it.
Were you able to give any kind of answer when people were like, Michael, what's going on?
Looking back on it, it feels like such a long period of time when really I think the really bad part was really only probably 3 months because Zion was born at the end of September and then I was probably okay-ish through October. And then November and December got really bad. And then at the end of December, we had some family events that like Christmas, getting together with family, doing fun stuff together. And I could not do it. Like I showed up. So I should say before this. So I remember coming home, with these two little ones in car seats in the back of the car, coming home from grocery trip or whatever. And our neighborhood had this little loop in it. And, I kind of started to pull up to the house and I thought, I can't get the kids out. And I don't think they were crying or anything. It was just like the difficulty of
emotionally, you just like couldn't bear them.
Yeah, just like trying to go home. Yeah. So I actually like just started driving loops in the neighborhood.
Circle.
And I remember driving for 30 or 45 minutes just so I wouldn't have to get out of the car and go into the house.
Yeah. What got you to the point where you could?
So I remember showing up to this family get together for Christmas and I'm looking in the window and inside are all these people that I love. And it's like dark outside, it's cold, and inside is this kind of warm picture of everyone you love all together. And I sat out in the car and I just thought, I can't go in there. Just because, when you think about like the beautiful, it's like I could see all the gifts around me that God had given me and I just could not, like it was like I couldn't touch it. It's like right there, but you can't touch it.
And I think that's part of what's so frustrating about it is like, because you can see that, but so it makes you feel a little bit crazy because you can see all the blessings, all the good things surrounding you. You can even thank God for them. And yet there's this weight that you feel like you can't explain because you feel like you shouldn't feel that way.
Right. Yeah. So then you've got guilt that's feeding the depression. That's feeding the guilt. That's feeding the depression. Right. And just this weight of like knowing that you're a sinner and seeing your sin and seeing God's goodness and not being able to, it's like it's right there, but you can't grasp it. It's like you know it with your mind, but you can't. It's like somehow your ability to taste and feel that the Lord is good is just
like right on the other side of.
Yeah. And so you just know you can see God's good gifts to you, but you just have this overwhelming guilt because you can recognize it with your mind, but you can't feel any of it.
Yeah.
You know? So we show up to this party and I'm sitting outside in the car, looking in the window at all of these happy people, the people that I love most in the world. And I cannot go in. Like, I cannot bring myself to walk in the door. And Ben and I are sitting out in the car and he's just waiting for me, like, and I just can't bring myself to actually walk in the door. And of course, the longer you sit there, the more mortifying it becomes.
Yeah.
That you're like, you know, creating this scene of like mounting tension for my poor husband who's sitting next to me, but also for everybody who's inside who knows I'm out there and I'm trying to like
pull yourself together and
like muster something.
Yeah.
In the middle of that like crazy warped crazy talk that goes on in your head, you know, what I'm thinking at that moment is like, I can't bring myself to go in there. It's so hard to talk to people, you know?
Yeah.
And then in the middle of like that crazy talk, I'm also thinking, but the longer I sit out here, the more they know that, you know, that I'm going to have a hard time talking to them. And so I'm making them feel
like
bad.
Awkward for them.
Because there's something wrong with me, but it's not their problem. It's just me.
Yeah.
So to go through just the weird social anxiety type of stuff that I know a lot of people deal with like on a day-to-day basis, and to just be flattened by that because of, you know, depression and everything was just really eye-opening. So I remember at some point that winter, my sister coming up to my car window. Apparently I spent that entire period in my car trying not to see people.
You stayed right there.
And it's just like, I'll just stay in the car.
The party passed.
I'll just like drive loops. We're good. But I remember my sister coming up to the car window and saying, it's hormones. It's just hormones. It's all hormones. And as silly as it sounds, that was like the beginning of me being able to get past
because you finally had some kind of answer. It wasn't like this obscure, I'm just going crazy kind of reason or rhyme for my emotions, but like there's actually something physiological going on. Yeah.
And I think part of that too, and I realize that this isn't, you know, necessarily going to be an encouragement to every other person on the planet who struggles with this, but for me, you know, realizing that it was like postpartum depression, I just thought, okay, well then eventually things are going to even out again and I'll be okay, I think. And just
so give you some hope.
Yeah, just to have some hope that I wasn't actually losing my mind, you know?
Because you had to have moments where you were thinking, has something changed in me that I'm going to struggle with this forever?
Right.
Yeah.
So part of the thing that as a Christian that you wonder is like, okay, is there some sin that I haven't dealt with? Am I
confronted?
Is this very thing the sin? Is the depression the sin?
Oh yeah.
And you just wonder like, what is sin and what is sickness?
It's not just one either. Usually it's all mixed up.
It's all mixed up, right?
Yeah. Did you wonder like, where is God in this, or is he?
I think that
is he there, or am I like? Is he punishing me, or am I? Am I part of it too, doing something wrong?
Is this kind of a punishment for some sin, or is it just my lack of faith, or what?
Yeah,
you're just so foggy-headed at the time that you can't really like rationally think about the problem and come up with solutions. But thinking back to it now, I think like maybe I should have been on antidepressants for a little while. You know? But I'm not even sure I knew that was an option at the time. I don't remember
because you weren't even totally understanding what was going on.
Yeah, so I didn't see a doctor. I just was you're just kind of trying to like
get through the day,
muddle your way through the day and figure out like what's going on without having full out meltdown every 5 minutes, you know? So to realize that it was postpartum depression, to give it a name, for somebody to be able to say to Ben, so your wife has postpartum depression. That moment, as hard as it is to kind of come to grips with that, is way easier than not knowing,
just being kind of
at all
lost
what's going on
in it.
Yeah. And having somebody say, like, there's something wrong with you.
Because then you've got something to work with. You know,
Right,
then
exactly.
he's like,
Instead
okay,
of
now
just
I
this
know, and now
sort
we
of
can deal with
shadow of something that's like
Right.
lurking, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Really just that moment where you kind of have a name for this is called postpartum depression. It's pretty normal for it not to kick in immediately. And to realize too that it's not as simple as is like, yes, it's physical. It's a physical problem. There's something not working correctly in my body. And it's obvious from the way that I'm feeling, but also it's obvious from other people looking at me because I've lost a lot of weight
and you're not happy.
Something's not working correctly, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you realize like this is a physical problem, but then you also realize that it's a spiritual sanctification, you know, and that there is sin mixed up in there, and that God was using it to humble me and to show me that I might have a can-do attitude about life and marriage and having children and all of that. But the reality is I can't do it on my own. You realize that he pours out so much grace on us that if he withholds one tiny little thing like our sanity, then we're instantly like at his mercy, right? We have to be on our knees and asking God for help. And I think that was God forcing me onto my hands and knees and saying, no, you can't just muscle your way through this one. Of course, my oldest is 10 now, and we've got four children, and it's just a lesson you learn over and over again as a mother that there are these moments where you kind of think that you know what you're doing, or you kind of think that you have it all together. And then, I mean, the more kids you have, like the fewer and farther between those moments are where you think you actually know what you're doing. But
motherhood is just a constant exercise of dependence on God.
Of dependence on God and of like humility of realizing, God, I don't know what I'm doing here. You better get my act together. You know? Like, you better be doing something here because I don't know what we're doing, you know?
Yeah. Monumental is hosted by Katie Walker and Michael Crum. It is produced and edited by Nathan Alberson with help from Ben Sulzer. And it is executive produced by Nathan Alberson and Jake Menzel. If you like the show, please don't forget to rate and review in the app of your choice. And if you're interested in more great content, including articles written by me and Michael and even some of our guests, please visit warhornmedia.com.